Thank you, Vivian, and thank you all for coming on this freezing cold day. As part of our work as an international women's human rights organization, MADRE has been working in partnership with the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq ever since the U.S. invasion of 2003. And what we've seen during that time, and some of this is documented in the report that we're presenting today, is a very sharp rise in all forms of violence against women. Our report focuses specifically on attacks against women, assaults and assassinations in the public sphere carried out by Islamist militias, as well as on so-called honor killings against women within families, and on torture, including sexualized torture of women in detention, committed by both U.S. and Iraqi forces. Many of you who are from the press have of course documented the kind of spiraling violence against Iraqi civilians that's now exploded into civil war, pretty widely recognized. And here and there, a few accounts also have described this rise in violence against women that we're talking about. But we've hardly seen any places where those two crises are addressed together. And that's what this report does. It demonstrates that violence against women in Iraq is not some private or family matter. It is not a narrowly construed women's issue. It really goes to the heart of the crisis that has gripped Iraq since 2003. And that's true not just because more than half of the Iraqi population are women, who are the people who are subjected to these assaults, but also because an organized campaign of violence against women has been one of the main tactics of the Islamist forces that have used the opportunity of the occupation to try to transform Iraq from a mostly secular society into an Islamist state. And that's, of course, the main political trend that we've seen in Iraq under U.S. occupation. And these are points that are elaborated in our report, and they're supported by interviews that we conducted and also by accounts from the media, trying to sort of connect the dots from different media stories that tell us, a little piece of this, but more often than not, don't have the context that we need to sort of offer a fuller understanding, especially for folks in this country, of what the war has meant for women and families in Iraq. One of the most underreported aspects of the crisis in Iraq has been an organized campaign of violence against women and gender-based violence carried out by the Islamist militias that are affiliated with the political parties that the U.S. has backed in Iraq. We've heard a lot yesterday, again, front page story about how these groups have used their control of Iraq's police force and the security forces to wage a sectarian war against Sunnis. But, more than a year and a half before those reports made headlines, these same groups were orchestrating systematic campaigns of violence against women in Iraq. And they were carrying out those campaigns with money, with weapons, with military training provided by the U.S. military under a policy called the Salvador Option, which was first brought to our attention by Newsweek back in 2005. And it's funny because as we've been doing, trying to talk to the media about our report, and here and there I've been mentioning that, and I always get this reaction of, well, how can you substantiate that? And then I say, well, it's from Newsweek. Also, the Wall Street Journal reported on it. And people are really surprised because what we've seen is, this is not just about the Iraq War, but it happens a lot. We will get information about a policy, but then we haven't really seen the follow-up in the press to tell us, well, what has this meant for people? What's been the consequence of this U.S. decision to back some of the most reactionary forces in Iraqi politics? So that's, again, what we're trying to do in this report. Now, of course, we're being told that the Shiite militias that the U.S. has supported are a threat, and that these radical offshoots of Shiite groups are attacking U.S. forces. We learned last week that the newest sort of spin in the war on terror is for the U.S. to covertly support radical Sunni groups based in Lebanon and elsewhere in an attempt to try to counter the threat posed by the Shiites, which they have in power. One of the biggest ironies for me in doing this research is that the same day that that new policy was brought to our attention in an article by Seymour Hersh in the New Yorker, I got an email from our partner, Hosan Mahmoud, who's the representative of the Organization for Women's Freedom in Iraq, based in London, telling me that she's been targeted for assassination by exactly one of these kinds of groups. So I'd like to turn the mic over to Hassan now, and I encourage you to pick up a copy of our report. It's entitled Promising Democracy, Imposing Theocracy, Gender-Based Violence, and the U.S. War on Iraq. I'd like to welcome Hassan.